Hello, my friend. Today I want to show you how I power my camper for full-time use. I'll be showing you step by step how I set up my solar power system that I've been using for over 2 years without any problems. So if you're trying to figure out how to set up your own solar power system in your DIY van, RV, or truck camper, this video may be very helpful. This system has provided me with all the power that I've needed. So first I'm going to show you inside how to assemble all the parts, and then I'm going to head outside and show you how I installed it. Full disclaimer, I'm not an electrical engineer or an electrician. Electricity is dangerous and can harm you, kill you, or start a fire. Every system is a little different since you might be using a different vehicle, you might be using a different number of solar panels, or more batteries as well. There are so many variables that can change. And every time you change a variable, it may change other components in your setup as well. So it's very important to contact the manufacturer with the full system you're trying to build so that you can review everything with them and ensure it's going to work for you. The manufacturers are the experts, not me. Now let's talk about what I'm using today. I'll be using a Renogy 200 watt 12 volt solar starter kit. Everything from here over is the starter kit. And I originally purchased this kit at full price and installed it on my camper myself 2 years ago. And because I haven't had any problems with it and it has worked every day for over 2 years, I reached out to Renogy and asked if they could send me this updated kit for free so I could make a demonstration video for people who are also looking to create their own solar panel setup. The next thing is this Renogy 1000 watt inverter. I purchased this myself, but haven't actually used it yet as I have plans of putting it into my new camper that is currently being built right now. Today I'm going to be using it to show you how it's possible to power your electronics using your battery, such as an Instapot. I'm going to try to power my brand new Instapot so I can start cooking meals in my Instapot in my truck camper. The last thing I'm super excited to show you is this Lion Energy Safari UT 1300 lithium iron phosphate battery with 105 amp hours. Lion Energy contacted me about liking my camping adventure videos and offered to send out 2 batteries for free to test out. After doing some extensive research on them, this new battery seems to be a really good product. I've only used this battery for about a month and a half, but it's been a significant upgrade from my old lead acid battery, and I'm planning on putting 2 of these batteries into my new camper build as long as they fit. I'll talk more about why I think this battery is one of the best batteries for your solar power system when we get to this part of the build. I was able to get you a 10% off coupon for renergie.com if you're looking for solar panel parts. Unfortunately, the coupon code doesn't work for Renogy batteries, but I was able to get you a 15% off coupon with lionenergy.com, and that will work for batteries. Full disclosure, I am an affiliate for both of these companies, so if you decide to purchase using the coupon code, I will also make a small commission. You can find the discount codes and links below in the description. Okay, so enough of that stuff. Let's go ahead and start having some fun and start building this system. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is connect the Renogy solar charge controller and the Renogy inverter to the Lion Energy battery. So on the solar charge controller, you'll see an area for the battery terminals and the panel terminals. So you need 2 cables, and then you want to take a screwdriver, a Phillips head, and unscrew each of the terminals on the negative and the positive for the battery area. Once they're unscrewed enough so that there's area for the cable, you take 1 cable and stick it into the positive, and then you're going to screw it down. Then you take the other cable, put it into the negative, do the same thing, and screw it until it's firmly inserted into the terminal, like so. I like to make sure that the cable's pressed all the way in and that there's no bare wire showing. Okay, so now that the positive and negative cables are attached to the solar charge control panel, I'm going to take the positive cable and attach it to a fuse. On the other side of the fuse, I'm going to be attaching an additional cable that will ultimately attach to the positive battery terminal. So the fuse is there as an additional safety mechanism. What I'm hoping will happen is if something were to go wrong, the fuse will blow instead of the cable overheating and potentially melting or starting a fire. Okay, so let's get connecting. So it goes cable, 2 washers, lock washer, nut. And I'm going to take the fuse and insert it in between both of the washers. So there should be a washer above the fuse and below the fuse. Okay, you gotta get serious about this. Okay, so here's a closer look. It's wire, washer, fuse, washer, lock washer, nut. And then you just wanna lock down and tighten the nut on top. And then once they're both tight, just put the cover back onto the fuse. Okay, so now that I have the positive and negative cables attached to the solar charge control panel, if I wasn't using an inverter, I would just attach the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative on the battery. But since I am using an inverter, I'd like to attach everything at once. So first I'm going to attach the cables to the inverter. Okay, so now that I have my inverter, I'm going to attach the negative cable to the black negative terminal and the red positive cable to the red positive terminal. You have to remove these little plastic caps first to access the terminals. This setup is very similar to the last setup. You're just going to unscrew. Bolt's gonna come off. You want to remove the washer, the lock washer, and the screw. Now you're going to set the wire right on the terminal. Then place the washer and the lock washer on top. And screw back onto the terminal. Then you just attach the nut to the bottom of the screw and tighten like so. Then you're going to repeat the same process on the positive terminal and then make sure everything's nice and tight with the screwdriver. So now the black negative cables attached to the black negative terminal and the red positive cables attached to the red positive terminal, and both are tightened down. Then you're going to slide your little plastic covers onto the cables and back into place. Now I'm going to take the red positive cable and attach it to an additional fuse as an additional safety mechanism in case there's any problems between the inverter and the battery. So now that I've connected the negative and positive cables to the inverter and installed a fuse on the positive cable, I'm going to connect the inverter and the solar charge controller to the battery. Okay, so let's get these wires connected. What's nice about the renergie battery is that the terminals are adaptable, so you can remove these depending on the setup that you're using. And I'm not going to be using them, so I'm going to take them off. And then the battery comes with 2 sets of bolts, short ones and long ones. I'm going to be using the short ones. Okay, so I'm going to take the negative wire from the solar charge controller and the negative wire from the inverter, and I'm going to place them on top of the negative black terminal. Then I'm going to take my bolt washer and lock washer, placing it right on top, making sure that the washer stays nice and flat, and then I'm going to screw the bolt down until it's nice and tight. Ta-da! Now I'm going to do the same thing with the positive wires. So I'm going to take the positive wire from the solar charge controller and I'm going to take the positive wire from the inverter and do the same thing on the positive terminal. Once the wires are on flush, then I take the washer, lock washer, and bolt and do the same thing, making sure that the washer is nice and flat and flush. Now I have the positive wires attached to the positive terminal and the negative wires attached to the negative terminal of the renergie battery. Okay, so now that I have the wires connected, I have power running to the solar charge controller and the inverter. And as you can see, I have 2 green lights showing on the solar charge controller. Now I need to push down on the gray button for approximately 7 seconds until it starts blinking. And then I'm going to tap the gray button until it cycles through to the blue color. Then I'm gonna let go and then it will stop flashing and hopefully show blue for a lithium-ion battery. Okay, so here we go. And now it's blinking blue, and now it's a solid blue, which is, as you can see on the solar charge controller, blue indicates a lithium-ion battery, so I'm good to go. Okay, so now that I have the solar charge controller connected to the battery, Whether you're using an inverter or not, Renogy suggests that you always remember it's very important to connect the battery to the solar charge controller before you connect the panels to the solar charge controller to prevent damage. So now that I have the battery connected to the solar charge controller, let's go ahead and attach the panels to the solar charge controller, and then we'll almost be done. Okay, so now I'm going to attach the panels to the solar charge controller. This is a 200 watt 12 volt system. I have 2 panels. Each panel represents 100 watts. So in full sunlight, I hope to get 200 watts of power. So I have 2 panels, like I said. It's a little hard to see because I don't have a whole lot of room on the table, but I have 1 panel face down and 1 panel face up. Each panel has a positive and negative, and you know which one is positive because it has a red ring on it and it's marked positive. So first I'm going to take both negatives of the panel and connect it to an MC4 connector. Okay, so now I have both negatives connected to the MC4 connector, and you want to push pretty hard until the attachments click and you can see the little connector sticking out. And now we're going to connect the positives, and like I said, you'll know they're positive because they have a little positive sign on them and a little red ring. So now I'm going to take both positives and I'm going to connect those to a MC4 connector. And again, you have to push pretty hard. Okay, so now that I have the negatives and the positives connected to the MC4 connectors, I'm going to take the positive end, which has a little red ring on the end and a positive sign, and connect it to another fuse, which is an additional safety mechanism. So you're just going to place the fuse right onto the MC4 connector. Now that I've connected the fuse to the positive line, it serves as another safety mechanism. In case something unfortunate were to happen between the solar charge controller and the panels, the fuse will hopefully blow instead of the wires overheating, melting, and potentially causing a fire. So with the panels, there's 2 cables that run from the panels down through your RV, truck, camper, or van, from the roof down through the camper to the solar charge controller. And there's lots of cable in case the panels are pretty far away from your solar charge controller. So I'm going to take the negative 2 ends that I took from my 2 panels and take the negative cord and insert it into the negative end. Okay, so now that I've connected the cable to the 2 negatives of the panels, at the other end of the cable is your connection into the solar charge controller panel for the 2 solar panels. This will go into the negative entry. If you look on the solar charge controller, you can see there's a little icon, a little picture of a solar panel that helps you know where to stick it. So you just connected the cable to the 2 negatives. Here's the negative end. We're going to place it into the negative terminal entry place, whatever you want to call it. Then you're just going to tighten it down, making sure it's completely pushed to the back and there's no bare wire exposed. Now you're going to do the same thing with the 2 positive ends. So you have the 2 positive ends with the fuse. Then you're going to take the other cable that is going to connect from the panels down through your RV, truck, camper, or van to the positive terminal of the solar charge controller. This is your fuse end and the 2 positives, and you're going to connect it to the cable. Now that the fuse is connected into the positive cable, on the other end, you're going to take that and connect it into the positive entry point on the solar charge controller. Okay, so now that everything's connected, I have the battery connected to the solar charge controller, I have the panels connected to the solar charge controller, and the optional inverter connected to the solar charge controller. Everything's basically set up now. As you can see, there's a solid green light under PV. If I were outside and bright sunlight, this would be blinking because ideally the panels would be charging. But because I'm inside, there's little to no sunlight in here, so it's just a solid green light. If you read through the manual, it'll give you all the details on the different light combinations and what they mean. There's just a couple more things I want to talk about this system before we wrap up. So now if I take this 12 volt battery and place it in my camper like I normally do and connect the 2 terminals, I'd be able to power all the 12 volt appliances in my camper. However, if I wanted to use any type of appliance like a hair curler or a laptop, cell phone charger, I wouldn't be able to use the 12-volt battery. In this case, that's where the optional inverter comes into play. So maybe you aren't using a truck camper, you're doing your own van build, and you want it to use appliances. This is where an optional inverter would be great, because now you can plug your charger, your computer charger, your Instapot, your phone charger right into the inverter, and you can use the energy from your 12-volt battery through your inverter to your appliances. Okay, so now that I've covered the basics on this setup, it's a pretty elementary setup, but I like it because it's pretty inexpensive and it's pretty easy for somebody who's just starting in solar panel systems. If you're looking for something more advanced, there's definitely more advanced options available, but I like this solar charge control panel because it can handle up to 400 watts, which means if you start with two 100-watt panels, you can move up to another two 100-watt panels, so you'll have four 100-watt panels and you'll have lots of electricity. Another really cool feature about this system is this optional BT1 Bluetooth module. I actually purchased this separately and it plugs right into the bottom of the solar charge controller. And it's really cool because you can download the app and you can monitor and make changes to your solar power system. A good example of when this BT1 Bluetooth module would come in handy is if you purchased a Renogy lithium-ion battery, you could log into the app and make changes to the solar charge controller to ensure that the battery is charging correctly, because lithium-ion batteries charge at a little bit different rate than your average battery. So while I'm on the topic of lithium-ion batteries, let's talk about some of the main reasons I'm excited to switch to these Renogy lithium-ion iron phosphate batteries. And one of the reasons is you can basically fit more power into much less space. Also, the lithium batteries don't need to be vented to the outside of your camper, whereas the old lead-acid battery technology did need to be vented for safety. They're also significantly lighter than lead-acid batteries and much more energy efficient. For example, if you have a 100 amp hour lead-acid battery, you really only get to use 50 amp hours of it. If you go past that, you start damaging the battery and shortening the lifespan of it. Whereas with the new lithium battery technology, in this 105 amp hour battery, you can use the whole 105 amp hours. So you're basically getting twice as much usable power. Also, Renogy says these can be drained and recharged over 3,500 times. Good luck trying to do that with your old lead-acid battery technology. All these things I've mentioned gives you significantly more freedom in picking a place for your batteries to fit inside your camper, as well as fit more batteries for more power. But right now, I'm getting pretty hungry because I've been filming this video for way too long, so I'm going to see if this inverter actually works and see if my Instapot will turn on. And then I'm gonna make some food and then we're gonna head outside and I'm gonna show you my actual solar panel install. So you can see how I installed it, where I installed it with this actual original kit that I purchased 2 years ago. Maybe it'll give you some ideas or inspiration on how you can install yours, how it works in my camper, and basically just help you out if it does. So first I'm gonna see if my Instapot turns on. There's actually an additional remote switch that you can plug right into the inverter, and then a wire that you can place it somewhere else in your camper and flip your inverter on and off. It's convenient, I guess, if you don't need your inverter on and then you decide, I'm gonna make some beef stew. Let's turn on my inverter and plug my Instapot in. I'm not gonna use that right now because I'm not in my camper, but we're gonna take this baby right here. So we're gonna plug this Instapot in. So on the front of the inverter, we have 2 outlets, a USB port, a switch that says on, off, or remote. And then there's also an area where you could hardwire like a more major appliance in that would be pulling much more ampage. There's also a ground on it, but that's a little bit more complicated. I just need a plug. I'm gonna plug it in. I'm gonna make a little beep. And now, I guess I probably should plug the power cord into the back of the Instapot. Okay. Oh, I already heard it. Ooh, it's making the little ding-a-ling. It's on. I'm nearly positive. I can't see the front, but I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna be able to make some great beef stew. Okay, so the Instapot's on. This was an operation success. Isn't this crazy? You can harvest energy from the sun, store it in your battery, then plug your Instapot into your inverter, then make beef stew. Technically, I could go live in the woods for, what did I say, 3,500 charge cycles, which means, well, the battery might last longer than me, I'm not quite sure, but it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do with a little bit of reading, some YouTube watching, some contacting the manufacturer. And I really only had like a couple hours. It didn't take me that long to set this up. So I hope I inspired you to potentially build your own solar power system if you're trying to do so. It's really not that hard. I should be an Instapot sponsor. Just kidding, just kidding. So now I'm just gonna hit one of these buttons and then we're gonna head outside. Is it starting? I think it says countdown. 3, 2, 1, blast off! The 200 watt solar panel kit comes with a full hardware and mounting kit. So there's 4 brackets, 4 for each panel, and then the hardware to secure them to your roof. I was a little sketched out by drilling directly into my roof because I don't want any potential leaks. So I actually drilled holes into the crossbars of my roof rack and then attached them to the crossbars of the roof rack. And that way I can still use the other half of the roof rack when I need to, and I didn't have to drill directly into my roof. It sounds a little confusing, so I'll just let you see it for yourself. So here you can see the roof racks. They're pretty wide across the width of my camper. I didn't want to drill into the roof, so I took half of the roof rack and used it to mount the panels right next to each other. So I screwed right into the roof racks and secured them down. Then I took all the wiring and secured it to the roof with these self-adhesive stick-down clips that I ran zip ties through to secure the wire to them. You can find these adhesive clips in the electrical section at Home Depot. Then I took the wires and slipped them through the refrigerator vent on the roof. And this compartment is right next to the pantry, so I drilled a hole into the pantry and ran the wires down through the pantry and then into the battery compartment. You can see the white battery compartment cover because my original batteries were the lead acid batteries, so they have to be enclosed and vented to the outside for safety. Here's the old charge controller I installed. This is the older version before they updated it to include a lithium-ion battery option. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully I was able to help or inspire you to start building your own setup.